It's election season, and candidates are vying for your vote to represent their party in the general election. In 2025, we will decide who will represent us, not just in the governor's office, lieutenant governor, attorney general, but also the legislature, the House of Delegates, and local offices in Hampton Roads. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're joining us for our 2025 election preview series. As always, we'd like to thank you for joining us, as you always do, every Sunday at this time, as we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss important issues that are relevant and prevalent to the community. As we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, the greatest and the best HBCU in the Commonwealth and the country, from none other than WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. Well, we hope that you're enjoying your summer so far. I know we're not officially in summer, but I tell you what, based upon how the weather is, it seems like we're almost there. So, again, make sure you stay hydrated, make sure you stay safe, and make sure you enjoy yourself and get some rest. It's funny. I was talking with a colleague the other day, and I was saying it seemed like this particular semester felt like an entire year. And I think everybody's feeling that same way because of the climate that we're in politically. All politics is local. No matter what happens from Washington, even around the world, or from our state's capital in Richmond, it all has a local impact. We feel it in our homes, we feel it in our communities, we feel it in our churches, we feel it in our families, and we feel it in our workplace. The key, I think, to success is making sure that we keep everything in perspective, making sure that we keep the main thing first, God and family and ourselves in that order, and ensuring that we as a whole are operating at our optimum level. In order to do that, we got to make sure that we stay informed and make sure that we stay engaged and ensure that the persons that we want to represent us, to voice our concerns, opinions, all of that in our nation's capital, in our state's capital, in our local city council, in our local school board, and all across all constitutional offices are heard. So with that being the case, this show, we're going to take a look and give a preview of what is happening and what's going to happen across the state. Here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we know that 2025 is the year in which we elect a new governor, new lieutenant governor, new attorney general. The executive office of our Commonwealth will change. Constitutionally, our governors cannot serve consecutive terms. Now, they could be elected for 4 years, sit out 4, be elected another 4, right? That can happen. And with that, we understand that that's an idea that Thomas Jefferson and the original framers of the Commonwealth of Virginia instituted. Some believe it's great wisdom because there are term limits there where you can get new blood and new ideas and individuals who create policies that are relevant, to that time. Others think if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but at the same time, one thing that we do know is that we have an opportunity to bring in new ideas or keep the same type ideas continuing in our Commonwealth. This election is no different. But also, this time around, we also have every single House seat in the House of Delegates up for election or re-election, depending on who's serving. That means all 100 seats of the legislature are up. Now, we have 140 total General Assembly members, 40 in the Senate, and then, of course, 100 in the House of Delegates. With that being the case, our House of Delegates are elected every 2 years, with our senators elected every 4 years. With that being the case, we know that when we look at the power and the swing of power in our Commonwealth and also the country, we know the legislative branch and the executive branch are really two of the most important branches in government. And, of course, our courts are the referees. They're the tiebreaker, if I can say that. If there's something that we believe as a society that is unjust, that's illegal or not good policy and goes against our constitutional provisions, we can say, hey, we want this to cease and desist. We can do that. But if not, then what we can do is say, hey, we want to continue this policy moving forward. So voters, you have a voice. Listeners, you are the voters. You have a voice. But in order to exercise your voice, that means you got to vote. You got to vote not only in the state election, also the local election. Here in the Hampton Roads, we have several very important local offices that are up for election. Here in the city of Norfolk and also Newport News, we have the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office that is up for election right now. We have some pushing a changing of the guard, if I can say that, and others pushing to keep things as they are. And then, of course, we also have a change where we look at the Treasurer's Office in Newport News. Last week, we had one of the candidates for the primary for Treasurer at Newport News on, Sanu Cooper, and we're looking for have other candidates on as well. As a matter of fact, during this series, as you have listened the last several years that we've been on air, we've been fortunate to have, and we call and they come. Everyone from gubernatorial candidates to lieutenant governor to attorney general to state delegates to local representatives that want to be on this show, that want to talk to us, want to talk to you. That shows value. That shows that what we're doing here at Norfolk State is the Spartan way, as we call it, is making an impact. So understand that you are valued and you're important to the voters. And because we're in Hampton Roads, the seat of political power, we're even more important in this particular election cycle. So first, I want to just take a look at a few dates. We're going to look at some dates, and then we're going to go down some of the races. So currently, we have what's called early voting. Early voting, in-person voting, you can vote in right now, Monday through Friday, in your jurisdiction. You can go to the clerk's office, voter registration office, whatever is applicable in your city, and you can vote right now, early in person in the primary. Our primary election right now is for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, junior House of Delegates, and also local offices. Now keep in mind, in the primary election, you have two sides, Democratic, Republican side. You vote on either side of that particular ballot. In voting on that ballot, you're able to choose the candidate that you want to represent you in the general election. By doing that, that person then runs in the general election, which is November 4th. Now, there are some offices where there is not a challenger. So that means they're not going to be on the ballot in the primary election. So that means on the Democratic ticket, you may have someone representing a certain House district without a primary challenger. That means they're not on the ballot in June, but they will be on the ballot in November. In local offices, the same way. So you may want to make sure that you are looking at your ballot, making sure you're going in and checking it, and making sure you're voting for the right persons in your area. Matter of fact, you can go to elections.virginia.gov. That's elections.virginia.gov. That's elections.virginia.gov and find out who's actually running in your city. You can also go to your local news stations. Your local stations here, you can look on their particular websites and find out and put into the search bar races, local races, who's running in Norfolk, who's running Virginia Beach, Suffolk, Portsmouth, Chesapeake, Newport News, Hampton, who's running these cities, and it will tell you. But make sure that you stay informed. Now, I'm going to highlight a few races here on this particular show this morning, but I want you to do your research and want you to find out who's running in your city, who's representing you in your district, and who is that person that you want to represent you. So keep in mind, the primary election is June 17th of this year. June 17th is the primary election day. However, you can early vote right now. Starting May 2nd all the way to June 14th. To June 14th, Monday through Friday, in your local clerk's office, voter registration office, whatever is applicable in your city, you can vote early right now and don't have to worry about the 17th. And the last day to register to vote in the primary is May 27th. Again, May 27th, the last day to register to vote in the primary election. Now, the general election and also special elections, both for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, the Virginia House of Delegates, and local offices, is November 4th. But early voting, in-person voting, starts September 19th. That's September 19th to November 1st. September 19th to November 1st. And you can register to vote in the general election. Deadline is October 14th. Register to vote up to October 14th. If you're not registered to vote, you're not. Now, I'm not going to harp on this too much. We'll get into this in another show, in our Get Out the Vote show. But if you're not registered to vote, you are not, and I repeat, you are not living up to your civic duties. You're not honoring those, our ancestors of the past, those that strove and those that sacrificed blood, sacrificed tears, sacrificed their lives to give you the opportunity to vote. So I want to make sure that you exercise your right to vote. Go register to vote. Take your family to register to vote. If you have children, I used to take my boys with me when I went to the polls to go vote. Even though they couldn't vote, I took them with me, showed them how it's done, had them look at the ballot, explain to them what I was doing so that I could show them the way of how to vote. And going with them to vote for the very first time in their first election was phenomenal. Let me tell you, it was a real treat in the 2024 election to see them vote for the first time. So again, it is something that is near and dear to my heart and should be near and dear to yours. If you're not registered to vote, go vote, because at the end of the day, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. If you don't do politics, politics will certainly do you. So we will make sure that you get out there and vote. So once again, primary election is June 17th and the general election is November 4th. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at what's happening in our local offices that's running. Then we'll take a look at the national as well. Now, currently, we find that according to 13 News Now, Hampton Roads voters are preparing for the primary elections in local areas. Let's take a look at Chesapeake and Suffolk. In Chesapeake and Suffolk, we have in the 89th District House of Delegates, both Republican and Democratic voters have choices in the primary. So this is an example of where you have a primary in both parties on the state level. Republican Party primary. Attorney Christian Shannon faces off against Chesapeake School Board member Mike Lamonia. And in a Democratic primary, voters will decide between Attorney Casey Carnegie and Chesapeake Bay Preservation Board member Blazin Buckshot Bloom. That's in Chesapeake and Suffolk. In Chesapeake, residents will also vote in the sheriff's race. Marine Corps veteran Wallace Chadwick III is challenging incumbent Sheriff Dave Rosado. So this is an example where you have an incumbent, Dave Rosado, who is also going against, an incumbent, Dave Rosado, who has a challenger, Wallace Chadwick III, in the sheriff's race. So once again, you have a perfect example in Chesapeake and Suffolk where you have a primary. One of those individuals I mentioned on the Democratic side, Republican side, will be the representative in the general election for that particular race. So make sure you go out and vote. In Virginia Beach, you have a Republican primary for the 97th District in the House of Delegates. So you have educator Christina Felder and former delegate Tim Anderson. So that's a primary there in the Republican Party. All right. In Norfolk, the great city of Norfolk, as I mentioned before, the current Commonwealth's attorney, Raman Fadahi, is seeking re-election and faces a challenge from former federal prosecutor John Butler. So this is where you have a challenger, where they're looking for a change of the guard and some are looking to keep things as they are, where the current Commonwealth's attorney is running for re-election. Now, we'll have both of those candidates on this show very soon. So we're looking forward to having a conversation both with those two candidates. And also in Newport News, for the first time in more than 30 years, long-serving Commonwealth's attorney Howard Gwynn has a challenger, current assistant city attorney Shannon Jones. In this particular race, again, you have a long-standing Commonwealth's attorney over 30 years who is looking for re-election, and you have a challenger, the current assistant city attorney who's looking to unseat him. We're looking to have at least, hopefully, both of those on the show as well. And also in Newport News, voters will also cast ballots for the treasurer's race I mentioned earlier against entrepreneur Derek Reason, and also for Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance staffer Sanu Jane Cooper. Now, of course, last week we had Sanu Jane Cooper on the show, and we're looking to have the challenger, Derek Reason, on the show as well. And in the House of Delegates in the 70th District, the Republican primary, you have a former union member, Cynthia Scaturico, and Army veteran Haley Dollar seeking the party's nomination in the 70th District there. So when we take a look at those local races here in Hampton Roads, those are monumental. You have city attorneys in Norfolk and also in Newport News. You have a sheriff race in the city of Chesapeake. You have House of Delegates in many of those cities seeking the nomination of the person that will represent the party in a general election. And you have a changing of the guard that will happen in Newport News. Keep in mind that the current treasurer in Newport News is retiring, not seeking re-election. So therefore, whoever wins this race will more than likely be the new treasurer for the city of Newport News. So those are our local races here in Hampton Roads. So if you didn't think you had to vote in the primary, well, you've got a reason to vote now. Once again, primary election is June 17th. Early voting starts now, May 2nd, all the way to June 14th for you to vote in this election. Keep in mind that you want to make sure that you understand who the candidates are. Go to their websites, go to your news organizations, look them up, and also attend any town halls they may have, any debates that they may have, so that you're making a well-informed decision. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're listening to our 2025 election series show. We're previewing the candidates for the June primary and also looking at the current races that are going to take place in the general election of November 4th. Keep in mind that you now have an opportunity to register to vote. To vote in the primary election, you can register all the way up until, once again, in May 27th. And to register to vote in the general election, you have until October 14th. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to elect a new governor, a lieutenant governor, and also attorney general here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. With that being the case, that means that the time of Governor Glenn Youngkin is coming to an end. And according to Virginia Mercury, from the top down, Virginia's 2025 elections are packed with contenders. As a matter of fact, the Democrats are surging with a record House field and also a cash advantage as Republicans try to avoid a primary but may face turnout challenges down ballot. According to Virginia Mercury, the 2025 election season in Virginia is officially underway, and the landscape is coming into focus as we got to the filing deadline for the June primaries. Now, at the top of the tickets, they're set, full of a list of candidates for the House of Delegates. Also, both parties are preparing what could be one of the most consequential elections years in the Commonwealth's history. Let me tell you how we're going to make history in the Commonwealth. We're going to make history in the Commonwealth because for the very first time, we're going to elect a woman as the governor of this Commonwealth. For the very first time. Once again, this is something that is not just groundbreaking, but it's historic. And not just any woman, but we may elect the first black woman and first naturalized citizen as the Commonwealth's governor here in Virginia if we elect current Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earle-Sears. And we also may elect the first white female governor here in the Commonwealth of Virginia if we elect Abigail Spanberger, former U.S. Congresswoman. With that being the case, this election not only is going to be historic at the top of the ticket, but is going to be historic all the way down as well. So let's get into it. We know that Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earle-Sears became the Republican nominee for governor pretty much by default after several challengers tended to fail to submit enough ballot signatures to really qualify for a primary ballot. So she received the endorsement of the current governor and endorsement across the board from many Republican Party members. So there was really no doubt that she would be the nominee for the Republican Party. And then, of course, Abigail Spanberger, she enters the race with a clear financial advantage. She is and received by default the nomination as well as the Democratic nominee for this election cycle. And she enters this race with raising so far as of last month, $9.6 million by the end of 2024, $6.6 million with current cash on hand. And last month, her team announced an additional $6.7 million in the first quarter of 2025. So, of course, she's looking to probably break those numbers as the election draws nearer. Now, in addition to that, they're saying that they're running a grassroots campaign and they're looking for strong support across the board with a bunch of volunteers. So, like any election cycle, this is huge. This is huge. People are going to be motivated, excited to move forward and do all the things. Now, when we look at Lieutenant Governor Wilson Merle Sears, she ended 2024 with $2.6 million cash on hand. Well, $2.6 million raised, $2.1 million cash on hand. But again, last month, her campaign announced $3.1 million haul for the first quarter. And that's the figure she achieved despite being unable to really raise much money during that reporting period. So as a sitting member of the legislature, this is the reason why she is actually barred from fundraising during the General Assembly session. So that number is slightly skewed when you look at the advantage of who has the most, because as Lieutenant Governor, she was in session. So she really couldn't fight. I mean, she really couldn't raise money. But again, we see where this is headed. It's going to be historic, a lot of money, a lot of funding that's being thrown into this particular race, because as Virginia votes, so does the rest of the country. As Virginia goes, so does the rest of the United States. As Virginia's policies move forward, so does the rest of the United States. As a matter of fact, when we talk about policy, I'll digress for a moment. Governor Glenn Youngkin's policies that we see, whether it was the teaching of African-American history, or what they call divisive history, teaching of critical race theory, whether it be downsizing government, whether it be limiting funding for education as it relates to higher education, whether it be pushes in other area that we see that's happening nationally. These are the same policies that we see happening nationally. But it all started here in the Commonwealth in 2021-22, right? The first 100 days. So if you look at the first 100 days of current Governor Glenn Youngkin's agenda and look at against Project 2025, the first 100 days of President Donald Trump's policies, it's pretty much the same, if not absolutely identical. So again, we want to make sure that you understand from a large perspective of what we're in state for, from a large perspective of why your vote matters, from a large perspective of why it's important that you register to get out there and vote. As a matter of fact, according to Stephen Farnsworth, a political science professor at University of Mary Washington, he said the absence of a gubernatorial primary gives both major candidates a strategic edge heading into November, saying this is the best case scenario for both candidates, meaning that they can now cater to their party's ideological base and bring people into the race that normally would not actually actually get out there and vote. So let's take a look at some of the down ballot election races. Let's take a look at Lieutenant Governor. In Lieutenant Governor, this race has drawn a large, diverse field on both sides. First, let's look at the Republican side. We got 3 Republicans seeking a nomination for Lieutenant Governor. U.S. Navy veteran John Curran, Pat Herity, the last remaining Republican on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, and conservative radio host John Reed. Now, we know that it's been a little controversy on the Republican side with the issues with the governor and the head of the PAC allegedly asking and pushing John Reed to step out of the race, and things that were happening that he said are false, and so forth and so on. But basically what it has done now is really pushed the Republican Party and the lieutenant governor's race into a spotlight that they really didn't want to be in. So instead of drawing attention to the policies, is now drawn toward this spectacle. However, we're, as the news cycle goes, this will disappear very soon, and they'll move forward with their particular candidate that they are seeking to represent the Republican Party in this upcoming general election. On the Democratic side of the field, it's even more crowded. You got 6 candidates vying for the nomination. Attorney Alex Bastina, State Senators Hashmi, Democrat out of Richmond, and also State Senator Aaron Rouse, a Democrat out of representing Virginia Beach. You got a physician, Babrul Latif, former U.S. Department of Justice counsel Victor Saladago, and former Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney. So we're looking to have several of those individuals that are running on the show. And, again, we're looking to have those that are top contenders. So if they're polling at a certain particular level, we're looking to have them on the show to talk about why they believe they should be the ones for you to vote for in this upcoming election. Also, when we look at the AG's race, Attorney General represented Republican incumbent Jason Miyares. He's seeking a second term. And he made history as the first Latino elected statewide to an office in Virginia, running unopposed. He's running unopposed in a GOP Republican primary. And you have two Democrats seeking a nomination. You have Democrat former state delegate Jay Jones of Norfolk, who also ran in 2021 but lost in a primary to then incumbent Mark Herron. And then also you have Henrico County Commonwealth's attorney Shannon Taylor. She's a veteran local prosecutor, who's also seeking a Democratic nod. So Jay Jones and Shannon Taylor, Hampton Roads, Richmond, they're seeking the nomination for Attorney General for the Democratic race. Now, when we take a look at the House of Delegates, you have all 100 seats that are open on this ballot. Democrats are fielding 114 candidates in 96 districts. Republicans are running 76 in 66 districts. And the Democrats have primaries in 14. Republicans have primaries in 10. Now, when we take a look at what's winnable, according to the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, they announced a seven-figure investment in campaigns for 4 incumbents that they view as winnable districts. Delegate Josh Thomas, a Democrat out of Prince Williams, Josh Cole, Democrat out of Fredericksburg, Delegate Nadarius Clark, Democrat out of Suffolk, and also Delegate Michael Fagans, Democrat out of Virginia Beach. Each of those individuals won their 2023 race by 3 to 6 percentage points. So those 4 districts, all Democratic, are now up for re-election, and those are what we call purple districts. That means they're not solid blue, they're not solid red, but they're purple. But they each won those by 3 to 6%. So the Democratic Party, they're not taking this race lightly. They're putting their money where their mouths are. In addition to that, when you take a look at the margin of the House, the margin for control of the House couldn't be tighter. When just 975 votes statewide ultimately determined which party held the majority, the razor-thin outcome is a vivid reminder of how every district and every ballot cast can prove to be decisive in this election. Now, I want to make sure that we understand, when we look at who's who, our NSU alums, Senator Lamont Bagby, who chairs the Democratic Party of Virginia, says stakes are high. That's because right now, the Democrats' narrow margin is 51-49 in the House. In addition to that, their margin is as thin in the Senate, but of course the Senate stays. So in order to keep that margin and increase it, they're saying everybody's got to go out to vote. In order to capture that margin or erase it, Republicans are saying you got to go out and vote. At the end of the day, the only way that you can decide this election is if you're registered, if you're informed, if you're active, and if you get out and vote. Well, listen, I hope you enjoyed this series, as we talked about in preview the 2025 primary election here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Make sure that you go out and register to vote. Make sure you register in the primary. June 17th is the primary election, and November 4th is the general election. Join us again next week as we bring to you candidates that are vying for your vote. This is State of Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville. Until next time, be good, be great, be safe. God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.